Welcome back to the Marketing Perspective. I'm James Danella, and I am so excited about today because I get to speak with my friend and colleague, Eric Carlson of Scene Lab Productions. We've known each other for quite some time. We've done a lot of work together, and today we're talking about all things video. Probably one of my favorite topics because if you don't know, I started my career in television and in film and came up the ranks in that world first before I crossed over and sold out to the agency side. There's so many uses today for video as opposed to back in the day where, you know, you make a commercial and you may use it for that specific reason, or you would make an infomercial or an educational video for a very large company. They had their specific lanes. But shooting video today, you can cross-use that video in so many different ways. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about. So many of my colleagues through the years feared what the internet would do to the advertising industry back in the day. And then again, they feared what would happen when digital advertising came along. But through it all, you know what was constant? Video. It always had a place. It always will have a place. If anything, it's just going to be even stronger as we go forward. And who knows what's coming next, right? So there's not a marketing strategy today that I would not include video to some capacity. I don't care if you're B2B, B2C, mom, pop, a big corporate. Video is a key part of what you do. And my short answer, why? Because Google owns YouTube. Just saying. I'm so excited to get into this right now because I get to talk to my friend and colleague, Eric Carlson. Eric, thank you so much for being on the show today.
James, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So we're over 1,000 miles away from each other, but yet we get to do this. We get to see each other. Technology is crazy, right?
Absolutely. Thank goodness.
Did you invent it? No. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. No, I did not. I take no credit or blame.
So I'd like to, for listeners, let's start with telling them your background and who you are and what you're about.
Sure. Well, my background is probably the definition of School of Hard Knocks, because if you go back to, it's about 20 years ago, a very good friend of mine who is super talented and I worked with for several years, Leif Poland, he came to me. We had done a couple of little hobby films together and some things just for fun. And he said to me, look, broadband is going to change things, right? Of course, I worked in tech at the time. And he's like, now that people are getting, of course, this is at the time, it's DSL, right? So people are going to get DSL at home. Video is going to come to people's houses through the internet. And there's a whole new opportunity for advertising. So we talked about it. And in 2004, we formed our own little production company. And we started just grassroots marketing this. Real estate companies, catering companies, you name it, golf courses. We just started kind of door to door selling the idea of putting together these little video commercials. And at the time, I think Leif had a Canon GL2. He had a Mac, right? One of the, I mean, this is like one of the old brick boxes, right? We grabbed a couple lights from Home Depot and, you know, some scrims. And I mean, you want to talk about a bootleg setup? This was it. But we started shooting things and we started working with clients. And, you know, when I look back now, I feel like when I look at some of the stuff we shot early on, I'm like, how did anyone pay for this? But the idea was, here's an opportunity for them to visually start to tell their story, who they are, what they do, if it's a piece of property, if it's a service they provide, and people were excited about it. So we started back then. I've done a lot of different things through the years. Leif and I actually made a documentary together back in 2013 that we ended up, you know, having on several platforms, Netflix and Prime and so forth. I went to work in the not-for-profit sector for a few years. And then in 2017, surprise, my wife and I have been married almost 20 years, but we had our first child. And so awesome. I went back to work with Scene Lab again. At that time, Leif had kind of ventured into different things. So I took over the business solo, but he still served as an advisor at that point. And then over the last few years, a lot of what we do is real estate on the brokerage side. So not so much like property videos and agent videos, but more marketing for teams. One of our big clients is Sotheby's, regional promos. We work a lot in the tech sector. We work a lot in the commercial real estate sector, and then also healthcare as well. So those are our biggest ones. We get a few outliers in some other areas as well, but those are the ones where consistently we tend to do that type of client work.
Yeah. So if you're listening, I know Eric's real, and some of the stuff he just mentioned, I started visualizing some of the stuff that he's shot, and they are incredible. They're really incredible company. Yes, I'm bragging on him, and no, I don't get a percentage of money that he makes. If you're in that market, Eric is in the Hudson Valley. But Eric, do you travel now? Are you?
Yeah, a lot of our work is tri-state, right? So New York, Connecticut, okay. New Jersey. Yep. But the way it tends to work is some of our clients, because they have a national presence, we do shoot across the states. And what's nice is we have media partners in, Phoenix and San Diego and Orlando. So it gives us some opportunities to be able to help clients out without always us locally having to travel. Although on occasion we do. Our team will pack up the gear and head, to different spots to be able to shoot things.
We'll have to revisit that conversation too, going forward. Okay, so you said something earlier about storytelling. That's part of, everybody has a story. I would like to dig deeper into that because, as you said, you made a couple of films in the beginning, and part of my background was doing that. Well, that's 2 hours. A film is, about 2 hours or 90 minutes at least. I think it's kind of easy to tell a story in that amount of time. Heck, it's even easier to tell an influencer story in 2 or 3 minutes, but try to tell a story in 30 seconds in a commercial. And people say, oh, it's just a commercial. It's just advertising. It is a lot harder than you think to have a complete story. Can you speak into that? Because it's something you're very good at.
Man, I'll tell you, it goes back to, I think it was Mark Twain who wrote, right? And I'm going to misquote this to some degree. So let's just put single quotes on it. I apologize. I would have written a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time, right? So his point was what? It's hard to be concise. Yeah, it's very difficult. And so when you're talking about a video, let's say to tell your brand story or to share something new about what your company is doing or what your organization's about to do, that's really tough. And when people think, a lot of times what will happen is clients will come to us and they'll say to us, we want to do a video, or we want to do a short film on this. And they'll start out with a number. Let's say they say, we want to do a 2-minute piece. But when we start kicking around ideas, and a lot of times they'll give us their first draft of what they call a script. And it's 5 minutes, right? And so it's like, okay, it's good. We want to know what they're trying to do. So that's for us, one of the first things we try to do, and I don't want to jump ahead if we're going to jump into process, but we try and ascertain, hey, what is it? What do you expect from this? Who do you want to watch this? And what do you want their reaction to be? And by knowing that, then we can try and help them get where they want to go. Because, I'll use myself as an example. When it comes to certain trades or skills, I might know what I want to do or what I want it to look like at the end, but I don't necessarily know how to get there, right? So I need a professional to come in and help me. Hey, this is what I want to do. I know the things I don't want to do or don't want to see, but I need someone to help me get there. And so that's our job, is to find out what it is they want to do. And sometimes how they think they want to get there, if you can help them appreciate, that might not be the best route. Now, at the end of the day, they're the client, but we'll just help share with them. I'll give an example. So we were dealing with a client recently. This company is very successful in the commercial real estate space, and very well known. I want to say top 2 or 3 in the nation as far as what they own retail wise. And so they had an idea for a piece they're doing for a new property in a major city in the Northeast. And they had an idea on how they want to tell that story. And they came to us. They really had put a lot of prep work into it. I was super impressed. Their marketing team's phenomenal. And they had some storyboards that they had put together, a script that they had written. But in reviewing the script, basically as a team, we realized, hey, there's a lot of telling when there could be a lot more showing. And so that's the beauty, obviously, when you're dealing with film and video. There are areas where you can become more concise by giving the visual that tells that story without always having to be so on the nose with a narrative.
You just hit it on the head. We have 4 interns right now going through our internship program, 2 strategic and 2 design focused. And one of them is interested in scripts writing. And we got into, and he's thinking feature film, of course. I said, well, that's awesome. I said, can you apply the skill into a 30-second commercial? And they do mock. So he has a mock for his client. He's doing the strategy, and he has a designer assigned to him doing the visuals of that mock brand. So they get to walk away with some real meat, So, excuse me, in this conversation, he said, of course I could do it. I said, really? I said, what would your process be? Well, it's the same thing as writing a long format script. I went, okay. I said, well, tell me all the things you want to say. You know your client. So what do you want to say? And he went through a whole list he was at like 3 or 4 minutes, of meat. And I said, how do we get down to one main point with a couple of bullets and to get the main point across of what you want your listener to remember? Oh, but they need to hear everything. I said, in 30 seconds. Absolutely. I said, okay, go ahead and try it. I can't, he's still working on it, by the way. His internship's not over. And then I threw him a bigger curveball and said, by the way, it's really only 25 seconds, not 30, because we need to be able to have the brand come up, and There's got to be something that we wave a flag on, right?
Yeah,
or a jingle, right? If a jingle's involved. And I said, but you made the point that I had made to him. Keep in mind that you don't have to say everything because it's video. And like a light bulb went off in his head. He went, oh, and it's a moving company that is his mock, moving and storage. He goes, I get it. And now I think he's pretty close. To take the auditory and the visual at the same time is a world of difference. And you and I both know some of the media vendors in your market. And I used to have what I call intense fellowship with the radio people. And I would argue that video is better. And they're like, radio is the best. And how can you use anything but? We're a captive audience. I said, oh, yeah? Because are you listening to radio in your car?
Right. A lot of big changes in that in the last 2 years. Sure.
Radio has a place.
Sure.
For anybody, if you're listening, but commercials, the visual aspect of it allows you to really tell that story in a much stronger way.
And James, you mentioned something that cued an idea in my head too. And I think you and I may have talked about this before, but there was a book by Harry Beckwith he wrote, years ago, right? And obviously he's one of the great marketing minds, in recent history. And one of the things he brought up, he had a whole chapter devoted to this, and he was talking about how many things can you include concept-wise when you're trying to share an idea, right? And so they did a test campaign on a commercial. It was a car commercial, right? The visuals were exactly the same in the 30-second commercial. The visuals did not change, but there were 2 versions. One talked about how the car, the performance was amazing. The interior features were, second to none. And it went through all these things that the car had. And in the next commercial, all they talked about was performance. This car had amazing performance. It was off the charts. When they did the test, basically, there was 2 groups of people. In the first commercial that shared all sorts of benefits that the car had, 0 people said that they would consider buying that car. In the second test, 6% of the people came back and said, I would consider buying this car. And when asked why, they said, well, it has incredible performance, right? So what's the point? The point is, you think that you need to share 100 important ideas of why what you're doing is great. But people aren't prepared for that. And all that means is nothing stands out. So it's better to share a point or 2 about why what you're doing is so game-changing or so different or so interesting. And then people come away with something. And if you think you have some additional points, well, that sounds like something you'd want to put in a completely different film or commercial. That's a separate point to be made later on. Right.
Longer format, more of an educational kind of a thing. Maybe it's showing in the showrooms. Exactly. Behavioral science is a key part of marketing, understanding human behavior. And I think video is one of the ways that captures it the most, because that process that we're talking about back and forth is exactly what we go through project by project to get the client the best effort possible. So I want to change subject for a second. I know this, I know your answer, and you've kind of already touched on it, but how important is scripting to you in your process?
Oh, I mean, it's essential. And you talked about screenwriters earlier and trying to, educate them and bring them up to speed on the difference between a long form film and a commercial. And sometimes what we've found to be helpful when you're dealing with that is, at least for an early meeting, putting a screenwriter in the same room with your director, with your DP, and maybe your editor too. I mean, maybe in some cases, obviously with smaller teams, your director might actually end up being your editor, which is great. But putting those people in the same room to talk about it, because that's where ideas on culling verbiage but enhancing the actual concept can really come to light. And then the screenwriter walks away with like, okay, I know how I want to approach this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the reasons I love working with you, because that process is my favorite aspect. By the way, not to brag even more about Erik Carlson and Scene Lab, he is, Erik, you're the only producer director that I can trust as the agency and not be there. I have given Erik projects and know he is not only going to meet what we need, but he's going to exceed and come up with things that, well, that's great. We'll use that instead. They're just that good. I'm gushing a little bit, but we really, heck, I want more work in his tri-state area so that I could just keep working with him. So if you're listening and you're in the tri-state, please hire our agency so that we can give Erik a lot more work.
We appreciate the trust and the recommendation.
Yeah, it's earned without a doubt. And I don't say it lightly, having been in the industry for so many years and went all the way from PA to executive producer and director in my career. You're the real deal. So
thank you, James. I appreciate that.
Enough love. Let's talk about all the ways that video can actually be used today, because it's so much different. All right, so I'm a few years older than you. I've been in the industry before the internet. Yep, back in my day. So it used to be everything was shot on film. Everything was very intentional, only used for one specific purpose. So let's talk about the way video is used today and the many uses that it has.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that piece to the puzzle, when clients start to realize that, I mean, and I don't want to act like nobody understands that. I think a lot of people are understanding that now, but we call it, repurposing, right? There's a lot of ways you can refer to it. We call it repurposing. So you come in and you say, okay, we're going to create this short film or this brand story, and here's what our objective is. And what tends to happen right along the way, and this is where there can be really good compromise and actually value add to the client. So they say, we'll go back to the piece about not including too much in one piece, too many points, right? They want to include 7 main points. And it's like, hey, can we pare this thing down to 2 or 3 at most, right? Even if it's a 1-minute film or a 90-second film. And then they say, well, we got to tell this and we got to tell that. But now what you can do is create the opportunities to capture that additional narrative, whether it's an on-screen interview, whether it's some additional B-roll that you're going to shoot to demonstrate those points. And then depending on what it is they want to share, those could be things. So for example, maybe their main piece, their 90-second piece, they're planning on it sitting on their website. Maybe they plan on it sitting one of several professional platforms. Maybe it's sitting on LinkedIn, or maybe it's sitting somewhere else that's related to their industry. Maybe they're going to play it at an event. But then we capture those additional things and we say, this would be great if you put it on one of several social media platforms. And sometimes we'll even, while filming, film certain portions of what they want, not for the main piece, but we'll film it, let's say, vertical video.
Right.
And we'll say, hey, we're going to put this one piece together for your audience that we think will reside on TikTok, or we're going to put this together and this is going to be an Instagram story. Now they're finding new ways to take the same content or pieces of the same content and kind of distribute it out there to different audiences who are going to, take that content in the way they choose to. Because, as we know, not every age group or professional group is on the same social media platform.
Mm-hmm. Which makes it very difficult for people to be effective marketers. So other ways that we will also use video, just so you know. So obviously for television, we also use it for OTT, over the top, which is streaming video. Any places that you stream to watch anything, there's commercials there as well. There's long formats, educational videos. Eric said website content, social content. That same footage can be repurposed in different ways as long as you plan ahead and you script for it and understand the shots that you need to walk away with on your shoot, whether it's a couple of days or a week of shooting. It depends on your needs. We also, and this is one of my secret sauces, we will transcribe all the video. So we've already written the content, but we transcribe everything so that we can repurpose it and use it. So for example, if Eric is on a job and he is interviewing and doing like a live piece with somebody, and it's a Q&A kind of a thing, but he's just prompting some good content from the other person, that content is invaluable because it's not just that industry content, it's content from that specific brand company.
Right.
And unique content is probably the most valuable thing you have when you're marketing your business. And video plays a very key part of it today. Would you agree with that, Eric? Or
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And usually within an organization, right, there are some key personalities that people either within their industry or clients that they're touching really want to hear from. So when you have that person on camera, that's a tremendous opportunity to end up redistributing some of that.
Right. I mean, video is content. You know, depends on how you use it. I think websites that don't have video, I don't know why they exist today. I think video is such an important part of it because of the way it searches. It's got to be built correctly, and I don't want to go off on this tangent too much, but if you're listening, understand that when you put a video up on YouTube, for example, I like YouTube better than Vimeo purely because Google owns YouTube. Google owns YouTube. I say it, I think I've said it on multiple shows, like understand that and then you'll get it. So if you put it on YouTube, on the back end, you have to put all the content. When we do it, we actually transcribe the entire video and put all of the content behind it. I want all those keywords and phrases searching, not just a sentence or two that one of my interns or a content person is typing up and say, oh, just put this there. It makes it extremely searchable. Why is that important? Because it'll drive traffic to your site. If you don't understand why driving traffic to your site is important, I really don't want you to listen to the show anymore. I'm kidding.
This is why they need you, James.
Yeah, well, everybody does. They just don't know it, right?
Right.
We both look at it like, why would they do it any other way? Like we have seen some bad marketing, and I have seen videos that I can't. I just can't.
Well, and I think that's part of that's a piece of the puzzle as well, right? So I'll go back to, let's say, for example, I'm going to have someone come in here and they're going to build a deck for me, or they're going to, put on a gazebo or do whatever. If I've chosen to hire a professional, it could be that I don't have the time to do it. That's possible. But it's also possible that I don't have the skill to do certain things. So when you hire somebody that you actually trust, right? Not just somebody you found, but somebody you trust, where you're like, I have a good feeling about this person because conceptually they're mirroring back to me what I think I'm looking for, right? They get it. Then you got to trust that person, right? And not second guess everything they're trying to do. And so we say that not because we try to have a big creative ego when we go into clients, but we're asking a lot of questions. We're listening to what they're saying. We're talking to the team. We're doing research on who it is they're trying to reach. And then when we come back with ideas and say, hey, I know you said you wanted to have, an on-screen narrator, or I know you said you wanted to go about it this way, but have you thought about going about it this way? It's not simply to be difficult or to try and come up with our own ideas. We really want to think about, hey, what's going to reach the viewer? What's going to, messaging wise, not just the visuals, but the way they're delivered, what's going to hit their target audience. So hopefully that helps people to appreciate if it's different than what they had put pen to paper on early, that may not be a bad thing.
Right. Hey, Eric, for the people, you just mentioned a bunch of different types of people, whether they have the skill set or they don't have the skill set. Let's say, they've got an iPhone, it's new, they shoot 4K. They're going to take the advice today from our conversations and try to do some of this stuff themselves because they're on a tight budget. Talk tech for a second and just kind of help us through what that would look like. Because it really depends on the format. It depends on where they're putting the video. So just speak into that a little bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, anytime you're going to record video yourself, whatever you're using, you know, so obviously phones are a big source of people capturing video now. And by the way, there are feature length film directors who have made this their niche, right? Recording on an iPhone and getting it done. The great thing is, and I'm using Apple just as an example. There are other great phones out there that absolutely get the job done. I'm just speaking to what I'm familiar with, right? So like Apple now has made the decision that you could record on your phone in ProRes, right? Which is a really high quality format. And so what you're going to come out with, that's editable content as opposed to compressed content, right? So if you record on a phone, a lot of times it's in what's called H.264, right? And so it's compressed. It looks good when you first look at it, but when you start to put it up on a bigger screen after editing and then re-exporting and compressing again, sometimes it'll fall apart. So, I mean, it's getting better and better, and there's H.265, which is even better compression now. My advice would be, if you're going to try and do that yourself, and if you think you have a good grip on the storytelling and the marketing piece, look at your device, whatever you're using. It's a GoPro camera, right? It's a little DJI camera, and think about how to make the content that's on screen the most important thing. Less about the tech, more about really good content. I have to say, I've seen a lot of video out there that was poorly filmed. I mean, and maybe even the audio was not the best, but the content is so good. What the person is saying or what they're doing or what they're talking about is so good, it doesn't matter. So if you can just take the tech side of it and make it the least distracting possible, that's good. I would advise people to maybe consult with a production company and let them know, hey, right now we can't afford to film, but would you be willing that we could pay you for a couple hours, you know, one of your creative people, preferably a creative with some tech, right? And could we pay you for a couple hours for a consult on how we could do what we want to do in-house? And that's something we're always happy to do with clients, because what happens is we give them some education that's useful for them to get it out the door. And they can use their own, you know, people use Windows Movie Maker, or they use iMovie, or they use something else on their tablet, right? And then at a certain point, if they're using video effectively, they get the return on it. And somewhere along the line, a lot of times clients will come back to us and say, okay, we're ready for something a little more highly produced. Can you help us out? So we're always happy to help kind of get them started down that road.
We do the same thing for small companies. We'll come alongside them and just give them advice and give them an initial strategy, save money here, spend money here, try this, do this, and hoping that they become a bigger company and maybe one day we'll sing our praises. But I get what you're saying. I think that's good advice. On the tech side, I didn't hear you talk about, so that footage, if it's raw footage and they're shooting ProRes, it'll come out at 4K or even higher, depending on what they have. I mean, we can go up to 8K now. Obviously, those files are going to be very large. So if their final product is going to be on social media or for internet, is there another way for them, because they may not have professional softwares like we use, to be able to scale it down easily, you know, I'm just going to export it for YouTube kind of a thing. If they're using, I don't know, iMovie or something really simple, is there a way for them in these simple programs to export down to a lower format?
Yeah, and they could even shoot on a lower format, but I like to shoot on a higher because it's better to be able to take it down, right? Because you might want it later on.
Agreed.
So yeah, there are a bunch of ways to take it down. In fact, inside iMovie itself, and I don't say a lot of people, some people may not be aware that iMovie and Final Cut Pro, for example, it's the exact same framework, right? It's the same thing, only Final Cut Pro has more bells and whistles built on top of it, right? So iMovie's great. A lot of when just to date myself here, when young people come to me and say, "Hey, I want to get started, I want to learn," I'm like, use iMovie. It's a great way to get started. Then if you decide to switch to Final Cut Pro, obviously you'll see similarities. But by the way, Premiere or Avid or
DaVinci.
Resolve, right? All these things. There's a ton of options, and they all have a similar look and feel. And you may like one or the other, but they all can work to get it done. And I think most people who work, whether they're video marketing companies or whether they're cinematographers, will tell you it doesn't, the what you're using doesn't matter. If you would have the skill, you can use any of them and produce a great product. But I agree with you, James. Make that, the footage itself only needs to be really at like HD level at this point. It doesn't need to be 4K, 6K, 8K, right? And that's on the web. HD is about as high as it is right now. I understand there's some streaming services that claim 4K, but honestly, they're doing some flavors to it where it's really pretty compressed as well.
Big truth bomb. We won't name them though. You said something a second ago, reminded me of another question. If you're okay, so I've watched you for years as you built your company, and I've watched this company grow and evolve, and cool toys, and better people, better equipment, better process. For the young video companies out there, or the ones that are just, hey, I think that's what I want to do with my life. Even there's high schools that are now teaching it in high school, which is really cool. That it depends on what their path's going to be, and if they go on to college, they at least have a direction of where they're headed. And if they go into our industry, is there any advice you can give if they're starting out and they want to be their own company?
Yeah, absolutely. One is, don't be afraid to attach yourself to a company and let them know your goal. Like a good, there are companies that if you tell them, I want to eventually own my own company, or I want to do, be a director, or I want to be a DP or whatever. There are some who are like, oh, no, we only want people who work for us. But there are a lot of good companies out there who are like, hey, we're happy to help bring you along and help teach you, benefit from your skill that you gain, and then maybe even form a good partnership in the future, right? So I'll just say that for Scene Lab, most of the people we work with and who even work for us are media partners, right? I don't have a lot of employees, right, as far as like being an S Corp. A lot of them are media partners, and some of them, right, not all of them, but some of them are people I've trained along the years, and they've gotten to the point where they're running their own companies as well, but they still love coming to do work where the process is all spelled out. It's easy. They're going to do one piece to the puzzle or a couple pieces, and they know exactly what to expect because we work together. And I would say from an even higher level, when you're young, there's a lot of people out there who know more than you. I'm going to say, I'm nearly 50 years old, and there's still a ton of, I'm going to say millions, but there's so many people who know so much more about things, individual things, than I do. So surround yourself with those people. Embrace the fact that you don't know everything. Ask questions. Appreciate other people's strengths. Because along the way, what's happened to me is, when I've done some measure of mentoring and training, as I start to mentor these people, you see areas where they are going to be so much better than you. They have more skill than you, or they have a better eye, or they're better with tech. And so along the way, you start to say, oh, this person is going to excel here. That's not threatening. That's fantastic. And so if you're starting out, surround yourself by people who either are smarter than you, or maybe they're not. Maybe you're a super smart person, but maybe they're more experienced than you. Right. And just embrace that. And if you connect yourself with people who aren't afraid to see you grow, they're not trying to hold you back and keep you in the same spot for the next 5, 10, 15 years. They want you to grow. I think that's a good opportunity. And it's how we have some of the great relationships we have across the industry is, I'm not afraid of that conversation when someone comes in and says, hey, I've loved working with you in this capacity, but I think I want to do this now. And it's like, okay, how can we help you to do that?
That's great advice. It reminds me, so quick story. So back in the day, so when I was a producer, I've worked with 2 different directors in the same season. One was Bob Giraldi. And if you look up that name or know that name, he was the #1 director in the country for commercials. He made more money than anyone. I won't say the amount because it may embarrass somebody, but it was insane. Like whatever number you just thought, it was probably more. Just know that. And I also worked with a director named Bill Mason. Now, both of them very talented directors. Bob had the mindset of staying ahead of the times, staying ahead of the curve, knowing what the next cool tech thing was going to be. He was about post-production. And it was why he was so well paid. He would spend, I don't know, because I produced for him, he spent maybe 2 hours on set any given day. Point, click, walk away, go back into his trailer and do whatever he did for the rest of the day. And we're doing like B-roll and all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, what the heck? And Bill was like an actor's director. He was there the entire time. He loved the process, but he could care less about the rest of it. He on set is where he was capturing what he wanted. Bill, all right, I'll say the number because it makes relevance to the story. Bill made $6K a day, where Bob made $25K a day. So it taught me a valuable lesson. When I crossed over to the agency side and into strategy, I want to be Bob when I grow up and I stay ahead of the curve. I'm always learning what's next, what's the new thing. Like one of my biggest questions in social media right now is there's no new shiny thing on the horizon. And I'm wondering why. Like, have we maxed out on social platforms? I mean, there's a bunch of little wannabes, but there's nothing big. Have the big ones really monopolize where we are and that's it? Because that's dangerous when that happens. So I keep an eye on things like that. And I'm always looking ahead. But you just gave the same advice to somebody. If you're young and you're coming out and you're starting a business, make a choice. Do you want to be Bob or do you want to be Bill? And there's no wrong answer. It's just, what do you want to do with your life? What's your passion? Bob was passionate about the tech, and he was amazing at it. In post-production, man, there was nobody that can touch him. I learned so much from that man just by standing behind him and watching. And then I had a mentor friend who he and I were both executive producers working at the same place, side by side, same title, same amount of money that we made a day, but he had so much more experience than me. I mean, the man worked on Star Wars. Okay, so I would be like, I'm not worthy, and bow to this man. And he brought me up. And I learned so much from him. What I thought I knew, I didn't know. And it humbled me and it taught me that I can always learn from others no matter where I am in my career. So I love that you gave that advice. I hope people heed it. You can apply it in so many different ways. Thank you for that, Eric. I really appreciate it.
Well, I like that mentality, James, and it's obviously serving you well still, right? Because the other piece of that is you reverse it, right? So I feel like at this point now, I'm learning a ton from people who are younger than me.
Right.
So I'll ask, like, somebody will come back and they'll have shot something a certain way or gone about it a certain. I'm like, why did you do that? Like, what made you want to do that? What's your thought process? Blah blah. And I just find like, there's so many things that I would not have thought to do or, purposefully gone about. And yeah, age, you see people who are excelling in their teens, 20s and beyond. So to think the only person who's sharing knowledge or experience is the older person, I think is completely inaccurate. And if you want to stay relevant as far as your team is concerned, meaning collaborating with them and contributing meaningfully, it's a two-way street. And I think that's one of the things internally that keeps us clicking is there's a really good dialogue. It's not, the professionalism, the kind treatment of people, the respect for others, I do think that comes from the top down. But you really want to make sure that people know that when you say, hey, we love to hear you speak up, we love to hear a question or an idea, that has to be evidenced day to day by the way you treat people and the reaction you have when people actually do come to you with an idea that's very different from the way you're approaching things. And you have to say, okay, well, let me rethink this. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that?
It's everything we're talking about is biblical too, but that's a whole nother podcast.
It's true. It's true.
I have one more topic, and I was marinating on it as you were talking. I was like, wow, did we talk about this? We're already kind of maxed out. Yeah, I don't think we're going to go there. It'll be a long conversation for both of us. So I'll save that one for another time. All right. So Eric, one last thing. I feel like I've gushed about you enough, but I want you, how would somebody contact you if they wanted to?
Sure. So Scene Lab Productions is our company name, right? You can find us on the web at thescenelab.com. We do a lot of work, as I mentioned, in the tri-state area. So yeah, reach out. You can always reach me by phone. I'll share my contact info if you want to be able to post it on, with the YouTube link or with the actual podcast link. But we're always happy to help out. That's the other thing is even consulting. If we can help you out and just getting some ideas started so you can kind of move down that road, we're happy to do that. And we've found through the years, and James, I know you found this, is the bulk of our day-to-day work comes from repeat clients. So we do have a few people who will come to us for a thing, and then we don't see them for quite a while. But most of the people we work with, it's repeat, right? So they see the benefit in it, and then we tend to have a long-standing relationship. So we look forward to that opportunity. We always are looking for, new relationships and new ways to help people. So yeah, we would welcome a call.
Eric, one last question. If I'm a client, what should I be looking for when I want to hire a video production company if I'm not going through an agency?
Yeah, that's a tough one, but a good one, right? I think sometimes people look and they'll, we hear a lot of times they'll be like, oh, my nephew has this gear, or, oh, this person just graduated from film school and they do this. And, people try and refer to gear or, a bunch of different things that they quantify as someone who can assist them when they need to tell their brand story or, share something about their organization. I think if you're going to evaluate a company to say, do we want to hire them? Bring them in, sit down, and see if they ask the right questions and if they listen. It's the old 2 ears, 1 mouth. So if immediately are coming in and they're pitching you and they're just pushing, and even if their portfolio looks pretty good, is that going to be a good relationship? And are they going to be able to do what you need them to do? But I do think one of the things we've seen, and even in other production companies that are having a lot of success, is they tend to ask the right questions and they're really good listeners. And then they can say, I think what I'm hearing from you is this. Am I right? Is this what you want? Okay, here's some ways we could accomplish that. So, more important than what platform they're on or what gear they're using or, how many years in the industry is, does it seem like they have a firm grip on how to communicate? If they can't communicate with you and your internal team, they certainly aren't going to be able to communicate your ideas through film or video. Okay,
one last quick story. This just happened not long ago, and it was my moment of what would Eric do? So I'm sitting in front of, it was a video production company. We were interviewing them, and they came to our office. I got introduced to them by a colleague that's in the industry, but they don't do the magnitude of what we do. They're a young company, and they say, hey, you should use these guys. They're awesome. We use them. It's like, okay. So I kicked their tires, but it was for a small client and a small budget. I said, so Tommy, I loved everything that he was saying. He asked some good questions, had some good information. And then we got down to math, and I said, okay, so here's the budget that I have. And it was, we know numbers. It was respectable, but it wasn't out of the park. You know what I mean? It was like in the middle kind of a thing. And I said, I'm giving you everything I have because it's a tight budget, respecting you. Oh, okay, no worries. I'll just get you the proposal in the next week, and don't worry about it, and everything will be fine. I'm like, great. So I'm planning on using. I was like, all right, wrote it in. He's going to be my guy. It was a Nashville shoot. He came back almost 10 times more than the number I gave him. I was like, were you listening to what I said? And then like a day later, hey, how's that proposal? Are you ready to move forward? I never even responded. I couldn't.
Yeah.
Plus, I was flabbergasted, if that's still a word in Wikipedia. I don't understand. Like, you didn't listen to what I said. I get that that's your math. If that's your math, fine. Why didn't you tell me that day? Because I was ready to book.
Yeah, right. Here's why we're not able to do it within that budget. Or here's why we're not able to do what we just discussed within that budget. Here's what we could do within that budget, or, whatever it is. But yeah, once again, that comes back to communication, right?
And we were talking one person, one camera. It was insane. I was like, so we could say that the market tries to just take and take and take. This market is tough. Nashville is extremely competitive. It's an awesome market. I love it here. Our company loves it here. We're really starting to, make the connections we need to make. But listening to your story, and I know that if they went direct to client and they said that number, some people don't know better. And if I told you the number, you'd be like, holy cow, I'll take that number all day long. It was insane. It was like almost more than double the last job we did together, more than double for a 1 day, one camera, one person shoot.
Yeah, it makes you wonder. Hey, listen, great work if you can get it, I guess.
If you can get it, exactly. Not with us. So anyway, Eric, I am so grateful you were able to come on today. I'm a little bit giddy. At my age, if I can still get giddy, I don't know.
Oh man, thanks for having me on, James. I really appreciate it. And good connecting again, and appreciate you having me on as a guest.
Yeah, and if you come up with a different topic that you want to cover, I don't know, maybe tiny homes at some point, we'll have you back on.
Fantastic. Very exciting.
Awesome. So if you're listening today, thank you for being on. I hope you got something out of it. My heart always wants people to be able to walk away and get some really good information and use for themselves. This isn't a shameless plug for the people I have on. Okay, once in a while it is. Today, it was just kind of a gushy kind of a moment. But it's not. If you notice, I don't even say the name of my advertising firm. It's intentional. That's not why I'm doing the show. Feel free to reach out to me if you'd like, but that's not its purpose. Its purpose is you to walk away, get some valuable information, use it in your effort to improve your marketing on a regular basis. We talk about all different topics, as you know. We have all different types of guests on. I'm really excited about where the show is going. Please, if you love us, download the show. That's the way to show some love. And comment as much as you want. Positive, negative, we're happy to interact with you. If you have any questions, I will personally follow up with you. If you have a marketing struggle, just hit me up. Happy to put you in the right direction. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.